What the fuck, Subaru? So, wasn't gonna make this video, but I feel like being a WRX owner is something I needed to do. I'm gonna talk about the 2022 WRX today and my thoughts and opinions on it. When the V8 chassis WRX came out, or at least was announced in November of 2013, I believe it was, at the New York Auto Show, something like that, it got a lot of hate, as pretty much every other generation of WRX has gotten, as the body styles have changed and stuff. And pretty much like any other vehicle, as time goes on, you're always going to get these people that just don't like change. I mean, just look at these. So, here's my thoughts on the new WRX. I don't personally like the plastic cladding. I think it gives it a really cheap look to the car. It just does not fit that type of car. I feel like it's kind of more utilitarian looking to me. Not a huge fan of the plastic on the rear bumper. It's not that it looks bad, it just kind of looks out of place on that type of car. Now, I have seen some renderings that people have done where they've painted the black cladding stuff body color, and it doesn't look that bad. And in fact, if you look at the black body colored cars or the darker colored cars, that black plastic kind of almost blends in and really doesn't look too bad. Now, people are also complaining about the engine. Going to the F824, you gained a whopping 3 horsepower and didn't gain any torque. Yeah, that's kind of meh. I'm not really all that surprised though, because if you look at the generations of WRX, there really hasn't been like huge power jumps between them. And all the people that were thinking that the WRX was probably going to get a 300 horsepower motor is, I mean, obviously that's not what happened, and I kind of figured it wasn't going to happen. And I also wouldn't be too surprised if once we see the STI that it's not going to be a crazy 400 horsepower monster like people for some reason think we're going to get. It's just not going to happen. With just my thoughts, with the whole power jump from a 268 to 271, that's a pretty good clear indication that the STI is not going to get that big of a power jump. Do I think that it's probably going to have the F824? Yes. And I think it's definitely going to have probably closer to the maybe 315, 320 horsepower range. I think that's pretty reasonable. Obviously, if they're going to go with a whole new engine platform and stuff, they're probably going to do a power jump of some kind. Now, that being said, there's people that have been actually playing with the F824. There's a company called Prime Motoring, I believe. They actually have a F824 swapped Subaru Crosstrek, and it's got a full STI drivetrain in it, so STI transmission, axles, rear end, all that good stuff, DCCD, and whatnot. And I believe they were running it off of a WRX ECU, because fundamentally the F824 is basically the same engine as the F820, same stroke as the F820, just a bigger bore, which is how they got the extra 400 cc's out of it. Now, time will tell as far as longevity of these motors and how far they can be pushed, but the one that's in the Prime Motoring Crosstrek, they push that thing to like 500 wheel horse, which is crazy, and that's completely stock internals. Granted, that's not really telling long term if they can handle that much power, but it looks like from the cutaways and stuff that I've seen of the F824 previously, it definitely looks a little more robust. There is some improvements in certain areas. I think the crank is the same pretty much, but being a split case design, of course, being a boxer engine, looks like the where the bearing journals are for the crank look a little bit beefier. It looks like the cylinder walls maybe look a little bit beefier. And then there's talk of the rods actually being a little bit heavier duty. I saw on a forum that people are actually taking the F824 rods and putting them in the F820 because they're essentially, well, not essentially, they are the same dimensions, but they're a little bit beefier, a little stronger. Because that was one of the main weak points of the F820 was the rods. Once you started pushing them past like 350 wheel horse, you really start running into bending rods. Now, I know there's people out there that have pushed these cars well past like the 400 up to the 500 horse range, and a lot of that's due to how the car's tuned and how you drive it. I mean, you could have a super high horsepower build, and if you know how to drive it properly, you don't have to have the most high-end, strongest components in the world. Yeah, it's gonna help with longevity of the motor and stuff, and you could beat on it a lot more. But if you know how to drive a car, you could definitely push them well beyond what you would think. It's just people being dumb and not knowing how to drive them properly. Especially, I mean, even a completely stock turbocharged engine, there's things that you shouldn't do to them, and people still do them, and they break them, and they wonder what happened. Well, it's because you're dumb and you were doing things you weren't supposed to do. But anyways, that's kind of my take on it. Now the interior of the new WRX, I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like that big touchscreen thing kind of feels out of place for that car. I know they've got to kind of compete with other OEMs and stuff, try to get the cars up to date, because Subaru historically has kind of always been behind on technology as far as like interior stuff goes, like stereos and infotainment stuff. I don't know, but that's not something that I would really be too worried about myself. I'm not buying a WRX because I want it to have the fanciest infotainment system. I mean, and that's the other thing, Subaru in their little spiel thing on the car, they called it the interior driver centric or driver focused or something, which I think is kind of the wrong terminology they should have used, because you want to see a driver's car, look up the Supra. That is a driver's interior. Everything is pointed towards the driver as far as all the gauges that you need to see and stuff. So Subaru kind of dropped the ball on that part. Probably shouldn't have called it a driver centric interior, whatever they used. But basically, I don't hate the car. I don't really like it either. It's just kind of something that it happens with every new generation of car, not just the Subarus. People just don't like change. You get so used to something and people don't want it to be different, which I get it. We get used to something, but manufacturers can't just keep selling the same thing over and over and over again. They got to change with times. I mean, they're in the business of making money, and if they just kept the same car forever, people would eventually get bored of it. And they're trying to get new customers in, and I get that. So they made some decisions that not all of us necessarily like, but it is what it is. Now, hopefully with some of the aftermarket body kits and components and stuff, we'll start seeing these cars looking a little bit better. I think, so just off those renderings I've seen, the plastic being body color is definitely going to help quite a bit. I think that's going to make the car look a lot better. There's just too much black plastic. It just looks out of place. And with it being body color, I think it won't look that bad. And we'll see what these cars look like lower down a little bit, maybe with some aero on them, different wheels. The wheel fitment on all these cars from the factory is not great. There's very rarely a car that comes out from the factory with 0 changes done to it that looks 100% good. I mean, unless you're paying the price. When you start getting into like supercar territory, yeah, I mean, even those, I would still change some stuff on myself. But anyways, that's gonna wrap up today's video. We're out here in Ocean Shores, Washington, enjoying the nice weather for a few days here. So if you like this video, once again, smash that like button. Lets me know that you like the content that I'm creating, and lets YouTube know that you like the content I'm creating as well. And if you aren't subscribed yet, consider subscribing. Started gaining some subscribers here, and we're, as I mentioned in previous videos, we're pushing for 1,000 subscribers. And if you have any questions, comment down below. Let me know what you guys think of the WRX down in the comments. What do you think of the plastics? What do you think of the engine? Do you think that it's gonna be a flop, or do you think it's gonna be something that is kind of gonna grow on you, like the V8 chassis did for a lot of people, including myself? Anyways, that's gonna wrap today's video up. We will see you in the next one.